The Seven Secrets of Somewhere Lake by Sam Campbell. Chapter 21. Homing Instinct. I have heard the expression, in the doghouse, but it doesn't begin to tell my situation after my tragedy of the Cameron mountain lion. No puppy would have let me in. I have consigned to the habitat of Pucha, the skunk, and not very welcome even there. John was tireless in his efforts to redeem my cougar photography from utter failure. He made repeated visits to the rock where the cats had been seen, but they did not return. Leaving Kona with us so that his travel could be swift, he embarked on a day-long journey around the canyon to come up on the opposite side of the very site of the cougar's stunning place. Nowhere could he find evidence of their presence. For 4 days the search continued. I photographed deer, bear, and a funny old owl with the lens cap off, but the opportunity of the cougars was the kind that knocks only once. We realized it was unwise to stay longer, for although it was a joy to live in this camp, we had much work to do and the summer was drawing to a close. "Now can I convince you that I really want that mountain lion painting?" I asked John, on the day set for our return to the lodge. "Owning it would be the only consolation I could have after what has happened." "All right," laughed John. "I am convinced that you want it, and certainly I want you to have it." We succeeded in buying 3 of his canvases at a figure that seemed ridiculously low to us, but it was all John would accept. "It is the price I ask of others," he explained, "and what you and Jenny have done for Kona and me is beyond estimate. Better that we add something for what you and Kona have done for us," broke in Jenny, drawing the youngster to her. "There is a corner in our hearts that will always belong to our little chipmunk." Kona was looking up at Jenny with a painted expression on his round bronze face. "Hakami?" he asked in a soft voice. "Hakami?" We looked at John for explanation. "Hakami? It means, 'where do you go?'" he said. "He sees you getting ready to leave, and I haven't explained it to him." He knelt before the boy and talked earnestly with him. Kona was close to tears at first, but gained control of himself and presently whispered his soft, "Oui, yes." "We would like to do our farewell song for you, if you don't mind," said John, looking up at us. "We always bid farewell to our friends, whether people, animals, things, or places." "We would love it," said Jenny. Assuming their usual position, John on his knees, Kona standing before him, both facing us, they began a chant. The rhythm, the earnestness of the 2 Indians, the way they were caught up in the meaning of their song, all was most impressive. "And now, may we have our interpretation?" asked Jenny when the ceremony had finished. John thought for a moment and then gave this English version. "Softly, softly, the Great Spirit whispers his words of great wisdom. Obediently we follow his commands. We greet you, O land before us. Be filled with the Great Spirit. Be joyful, O land we are leaving, for the Great One dwells here too." Our return journey to the lodge via Mulo was very bit as rough as the trip coming out. Twice we paused because tires had gone flat under the strain. John fixed them on the spot, the inner tubes having been patched so often they looked like crazy quilts. After a few hours of what seemed like life in a popcorn shaker, we arrived at the lodge. John and Kona stayed in a cabin for the night, planning to return to their camp the next day. It was difficult to bid them farewell, and they were reluctant too. "The camp will be empty without you," said John. Jenny had Kona in her arms. "We must have been an awful bother to you," I said. "A photographer is always a nuisance, tumbling down cliffs and forgetting things." "Being with you has meant more than I can tell you right now," said John sincerely. "Our paths have crossed once. I feel they will again." We shortened our farewell, inviting John and Kona to visit us at the sanctuary, and they promised that one day that they would. "Bless his heart," Jenny said as they looked after Kona. I could hardly let go of him. There was more mail from Hybub and Tony. The island was still a beehive of action. They wrote, "Dear Sam and Jenny, your telegram arrived too late. Tony was lost when I received it. He went chasing after Zowie out near Van Ishing Lake, and first thing he knew, he didn't know anything. He was gone so long, Zany and I went looking for him. For 2 hours we kept walking and shouting until finally he answered, away out in the middle of a big swamp. We got him out of there all right, and then discovered that we were all lost. The sky was covered with a solid bank of gray clouds, so we couldn't see the sun, and we didn't know north from up. I remembered you taught us that the top branch of a hemlock tree points east, so I found some hemlocks. What do you know? It works. We came out at the north end of our own lake and got home just as Tony was starting to bite off my ears. He hadn't had any food since morning. Don't worry about us, though. We had fun, and now I have hung a cowbell on Tony. The skunk odor is about wore off, so I can't find him by that anymore. I'll have to listen for him. Love, Hybub." "You know," said Jenny, "I am getting desperately homesick for our cabin, and for the animals, and those boys, and everything. How soon can we go back?" "In about 2 days, if we work hard." "Then let's work hard. It isn't that I'm tired of the canyon country. It is just that I know you want to go home." The next letter we opened was from Tony. "Dear Sam and Jenny, Hybub says I must write this because I am the one who saw the whole business. Late night, Andrea the raccoon came over with her 6 little problems. They are getting to the place where they won't always mind, and she has her troubles with them. We had quite a lot of tasty scraps for them, and they were sure put away a big dinner. They ate until they couldn't eat any more, and then they wanted a siesta. I saw 3 of them go down the woodchuck's hole. I started to worry right away, for they could barely squeeze in the hole, and I couldn't picture how they were going to get out. They couldn't turn around, as I saw it, and how could they back out? I had visions of importing a steam shovel to do some hurried excavation. Along about midnight, Andrea aroused herself and started to reassemble her family. I'd given a lot to know just what goes on at such a time. I have seen her direct her mob before. Usually there isn't any sound that you can hear. They just pick up and go. Last night, when she was ready, only 3 of her offspring showed up. She wasn't satisfied, and for the first time I heard her make a trilling noise. No answer. She did it again. No answer. Then she went all around searching and calling, wearing such a worried look. All this time I was picturing those 3 down in the hole slowly smothering. Hybub was writing some letters, and I called him out for a conference. Should we start to dig or not? Next we watched Andrea go right to the hole. She sniffed in it, and then tried to crawl in herself. The hole was much too small, but it was surprising how far she went in it. Everything disappeared but her hind legs and tail. Presently she backed out. She knew her chillum was in there, all right, and she kept calling in a way that was a mixture of a scolding and a bawling. We couldn't stand it any longer, and were just starting for the pick and shovel, when a woolly, black-striped face peeked out of the woodchuck's hole. The little fellow looked guilty, as if he had been caught in the jam jar. He had something coming, and he knew it. Andrea leapt over to the hole and grabbed him up by the head. She actually pulled him out of the hole, stretching his neck out about 3 inches. A second youngster poked his head out and got treated the same way. By the time the 3rd coon appeared, Andrea had herself worked up into a lather. She jerked him out of there and gave him a trimming that he will never forget. Then she took her brood on the double quick down to the lake and made them swim to the mainland. We took a flashlight and looked into the woodchuck hole. Way down in there, we could see a wide place. Apparently, the coons knew all about this big underground room, and they had gone in to sleep down there. They won't do it again. Next news, 24 hours later. Wow, what a day this has been. We have been out at Somewhere Lake ever since early morning. We found more tracks of the stranger's big feet, and we found a red handkerchief someone had dropped. This all happens on the far side of the lake, away from the trail. Someone is coming in from the west. What do you suppose happened? Sleepy, grumpy, and dopey? Or else some of the others crawled right up in our laps? Yes, they did. We had been sitting beside the lake, feeding them as we always do. They think nothing of taking bites of apples from our hands, but we began teasing them to come closer and closer until one of them climbed up in Hybub's knee and took a nibble of cookie. Guess the beaver didn't know what he was doing, for when he looked around and saw that he was on Hybub's lap, he flopped down and into the lake in a hurry. He came back a minute later, though, or someone did, dripping wet, and climbed back in Hybub's lap. Then one came up to me. Within an hour, we had them coming regularly. I guess they had as much fun as we did, for they tried to bring as much water as possible and let it run all over us. We were soaked wet, but we had a swell time. The beavers are getting wonderful. They just take us for granted. One was dragging a stick along through the woods when we came on him, and he pulled it right across my feet. I helped him, and he said thank you, or at least he looked it. Love, Tony. P.S. Roll call at dinner tonight. Present, Zany, Sally, and one wild fox. Xenia and her 2 wild skunks. 3 chipmunks, 3 red squirrels, 39 red-winged blackbirds, 7 blue jays, 7 woodchucks, 1 porcupine, Salt. Tony, Hybub, absent Zipper, darn her hide. Sam, cried Jenny, think of those beavers working right at your feet, coming up in your lap. Think of those cute coons. Are you going to take me home, or must I start walking? We're heading home, all right, I said with decision. I want to know who is leaving those tracks at Somewhere Lake.